Hi, this is the Vibrant Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm your host, Christy Oshita. Hi everyone, I'm Christy with the Vibrant Entrepreneur Podcast, and I have an interesting setup. This is my first time doing a video this way, so I'm recording a podcast, that's why I have this on, and I'm also going to share and be able to point a little bit, but also allow the podcast listeners to still follow along. So we talked about last time the lean startup methodology that came out a few years ago, and it's about testing a hypothesis about what you believe the product people want is, and then going out, hearing their feedback, seeing if they'll actually put money where their mouth is about if they want something, testing it, getting data, and then reiterating the process. One of the big issues with the lean startup that I encountered, because I tried to actually use this system years ago, about a year before I started Alana Life and Fitness, and I realized that it was a slow process. I was doing it by myself. It took a while. I faced a lot of rejection. So what does this all add up to? It adds up to depression. I was on the floor. Let's just put it this way. I was on, literally on, I couldn't be any closer to the floor. And I would call, the T-Mobile person to get something fixed, not for the fun of it. But they'd be like, hello, T-Mobile. And I'm like, hi, I'm Christy. It's so nice to meet you. You are so nice. Did anyone tell you how nice you are? It was a low point for me. Point is that it sucks. It sucks shit to be lonely, and it sucks to not feel energetic. So I want to share with you a really important formula that I came up with that kind of explains, in my opinion, how ultimately we all want to be energetic, and that's not a bad thing. We all want to feel energy, and how everything goes back to wanting to feel energetic, to the point that we can feel more compassion for ourselves for wanting to be around other people, for wanting to be famous. Okay, that's kind of me, who wants to be validated and have their opinion respected and to prove themselves. All of those things, maybe not a healthy desire in an effort to feel energy and to feel love, but understandable and something to work with. It gives you something to work with. It gives you the why of why you do things. And that's important because as entrepreneurs and growing entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur, going through the lean process, a lean startup type of process, which is what we are doing as entrepreneurs in some way of developing products. And even if we're surrounded by staff, but somehow have to be in a more isolated situation so we can focus and think, it can be very lonely, draining, and we can lose our energy. And that's the worst thing because we may not reach it to the end before we give up. So that's why it's important for us to implement some aspects of this formula that has helped me, and I'm still learning. So everything I teach is stuff I've learned, but it doesn't mean it's stuff I've mastered. Let me tell you, I still fall on the floor, and I still am delighted when I talk to a really nice customer service person. So I call it the Oshita Energy Formula, and we're going to start off with the most important thing, which is attention. I can't express enough how the most important thing that we want is attention. Attention is what moves mountains. It's what changes our lives. It's what gives us energy. And I'll share how it really is a root of everything. How I came across this formula is from years of dealing with depression, feeling isolated, maybe you could call it low self-confidence, anxiety, and it started at a very young age. I just didn't feel good, but at the same time I had this strong amount of energy and motivation to create and become an entrepreneur, but I struggled with this, that I wondered what the purpose of life was. So after growing up with this, maybe even from elementary school, of feeling sad and scared, intermediate school into high school, not having a ton of friends, maybe a theme. And then going into college, I started to realize that there was no hope. And maybe that's a very Zen thing to say, but it turned out I ended up finding like a Zen meditation practice that helped me so much to find that there was an inner peace inside of all of us. No matter what you've been dealing with, there is that inner peace that can guide us, that will help us see the truth and help us know that no matter what, in this very moment, we are okay. In this very moment, everything is okay. But it also taught me that the thoughts that we have are not us. So when I'm lying on the floor, just miserable, like crying, the thoughts I'm having doesn't mean that's true. I mean, it's a mood, it's going through me. There might be some truth to a few things, but the whole idea of what's going through my head is not necessarily true. And in a way, they're not even mine, which is what's crazy. So how does this bring back to attention? So the biggest thing is that what I learned is besides the fact that our thoughts may not be us, in addition, we don't have to be upset with ourselves that we have those thoughts. So that's big. I mean, how often do we have a thought and, if I go to a new gym and I feel insecure, I notice I have a lot of critical thoughts about other people because I'm insecure and I feel incredibly embarrassed that I even have those thoughts. I'm a grown woman. I should not be insecure and critical like that, I think. But I realize, those aren't even my thoughts. Those are just like chaos going in my brain, and myself is right here in my core. So what I learned from that is, how can I turn away from the thoughts that I know are not me, that I don't believe in, and I don't go along with those thoughts? And that's through attention. I can put my attention where my thoughts are, and in a sense give them validation. Or I can put my attention inside my body, inside my breath, inside my movement. I can have my attention stay with my body, stay with my movement. And that is attention. And that's the power of it, is that the moment I put my attention in my body and I redirect it, I can change how I feel, I can change what's happening, I can create energy. And the reason why that's so amazing is that we can have thoughts and we don't have to control our thoughts, because we can't. We cannot necessarily control our thoughts. We can give ourselves another thought, but we can't just control it and say, I'm never going to think about that, or don't think about white polar bear, because you're going to think about white polar bear. The point is that attention is something that you can direct. I wouldn't say you can control it, but it's something you can direct. And it's very challenging, but with practice, you can slowly direct it and redirect it to where you want it to be. So with that being said, that in a sense, I wouldn't want to say the whole thing starts with a sense of better control, but it starts with the truth. The truth is we can't control our thoughts. We can't just say, if someone says, just don't feel like that, just don't feel sad, just don't think that. That is impossible. But what you can do is you can put your attention to redirecting your thoughts to something different, following your breath, focusing on another project, consciously putting an effort to think about a different thought, but you may not be able to control your whole thought process or your stream of thoughts. So attention is really important because you can direct it, and where you put your attention, redirect it, because you're not always going to be like, okay, that's it. I'm always going to just pay attention to my breath, or I'm always going to just pay attention to reading. Your mind will wander, but what you do is you just redirect it right back to your path. And that process is the process of meditation, and that is a process of skillful awareness, and that does make us a stronger person. So with that being said, and we'll talk more about attention, as entrepreneurs, we need to be extremely conscious about where our thoughts are going, asking ourselves if that's a true thought, and bringing our attention back to our breath and our body, and therefore our vision, our things to do list, our positive affirmations, because that's what helps us stay energized and focused. So that was a pretty in-depth talk about attention. It's just that it's so important, and it's the core of your attention, your energy, that I felt like it was important to start off with that. So attention is ultimately love. So whenever somebody says, I just don't feel like you're loving me enough, or I would like more love, what they want is, most likely, is you're going to be giving them more attention. And attention can be in a lot of different forms. I remember there's a book called The 5 Languages of Love. And what was interesting about that is it seemed like these languages are completely in different ways, completely different. But actually, when we think about all those 5 different ways that they list in this book, let's think about them. One is language of presence. One is one-on-one attention, time together. I say attention because one is positive compliments. Another is physical touch, and I don't remember the other one. But if you look at it, the theme in all of them is that you've given that person time and space in your attention, in your brain. Whether you had to think of that person to buy them the present. If you're physically touching them, then you're definitely attentive to them. And if you're talking to them, you're attentive. Anything where it relates to being a sense of love, it's because you gave them your attention. And the reason why that's important is because then we can think about the depth of attention, and therefore the depth that love is felt. So if we feel like we're with someone and they're there and they see us, we're having dinner with them, but we just don't really feel loved, then what's happening? They're there. Well, let's start off with attention. Are they giving us 100% of their attention, or are they looking at their phone? Then their attention is not 100% there, and that's important. Do they listen and then randomly get distracted by a thought, and say change the subject in a sense that they all of a sudden forgot about what you were saying? Then that's another form. Then that's not a continuous attention. So you're talking, but then they're constantly getting distracted. Another one is non-judgment. So basically, they're giving you all of their attention, and they're not bringing their attention back to themselves and thinking, what do I think of that? Well, I think that you should do this instead. Or you can do it in a loving way. But if instead you sense a person's just kind of thinking what they think about you, then you don't feel loved. You feel judged and criticized and not really safe. So the type of attention really creates the type of love that you feel, or the extent of the love that you feel. And basically, if we ever encounter a situation where we need to show the person more love and they're asking for more love, we just have to ask, how can we show more attention? Okay, so energy is what you get when you put attention and love together. It creates energy. In fact, attention creates energy in itself because attention is love. So love creates energy. It's interesting how when we pay attention to something, all of a sudden it has new energy. Whether it's a project and we're finally paying attention to, all of a sudden it starts to actually come back to life. Or there's somebody in the department and maybe you finally sit down and you talk to them, and all of a sudden now they're getting back to work. Or it comes back to ourselves in our physical selves. If we just feel like low energy, but we start to breathe into our body and we start to really listen and be thoughtful about how our body experiences this moment, you'll notice you will feel more energetic, lighter, happier. So bringing our attention and therefore love to something brings that energy. And a way we can look at this that we talked about in business and starting a business is that we have to find a way to keep bringing attention to the positive things like our vision so we can give it energy. And we need to, and the things that we're procrastinating about but that we really have to do, but it's hard to do because we are solo entrepreneurs, let's say, so we definitely have to give it attention whether or not we feel like we're going to be productive. Sometimes you just have to go and give it attention, just read it and just know that that in itself will produce energy towards a project. So the thing about energy is that as you move together, so maybe you work with other people or you find a rhythm within your own self, you'll notice that you're going to start to feel this rhythm and it feels peaceful. And I remember dancing in Zumba class and just, it was just one of these fast songs. I think it has something to do with peanut butter. And then we had to like right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. But everyone was going right, left, right, left, right, left. And I just saw it and it was just happening and happening. And I just felt like time slowed. And I just felt so connected with everyone without one word, talking to them, knowing them. I just felt so connected and happy to be there with them and sharing that moment of rhythm together. So that rhythm created just a surge of happiness inside of me. And subsequently, that rhythm and that peace also created connection. So my synchronization with them made me feel so connected. And it's ironic because we imagine connection purely in a way of maybe talking to people, but you can have a connection with someone without even talking. And so that brings up to the question, what is connection? And it's a sense of having a rhythm and having the person confirm, having attention to your energy, and then you confirming that you see that you have attention to their energy. So that back and forth creates an immense strong connection, and the more attention and synchronization there is in that sort of building of trust, because you know what they're going to do, that creates a connection. And with that connection, this is the big part, and we'll talk more about case studies of this in our life, in our business. But the big part is that when you have a strong connection with someone or people, you will naturally want to give. So you'll naturally want to give. And giving it's just so powerful. But I think giving is scary. I don't think part of us could never feel the immense energy that surges through our body when we just feel like we're giving. We're not holding anything back, and our energy is flowing to somebody else in a positive way. And I think the question is how can so many negative things happen in the world if this is true? If everyone really wants to feel energy and these things create the most amount of energy? And I think it's because people don't know about these sequences, that they ultimately want energy and that they can actually feel more positive happiness by creating that energy through a connection and giving. Lots of times instead, I think we want a lot of this, but with it comes a lot of vulnerability, because when you give attention to something, anything, whether it's your vision or relationships, you're giving yourself. Your attention is you, and there's so much vulnerability, and that's what you haven't. That's everything you have, and I won't say everything. But imagine if you, from the very beginning, if you give your attention. You're being slightly vulnerable. And as you give more and more of your attention, as you go through these patterns of energy and you get connected, you're more and more and more giving of all your attention. You're more and more vulnerable. And it's a vulnerable way. It's a vulnerable way to feel energy, but it's the most powerful way. I think that a lot of the I don't say the bad people, okay? But the people who have been very misguided have found that they can feel connection, but with a sense of somewhat giving, but in a very halfway, so that it's not everything, so that they don't feel like they're really vulnerable, and so they feel like they're able to do all of this without being, screwed over. In fact, they have the upper hand and they have the power. So, but truly going all the way and feeling that immense power and energy of giving without expectation back is very vulnerable. So I think that's why. But I think if we kind of do a lot of introspection and we ask ourselves what we really want, I think we would end up coming back to really wanting to feel energy and wanting to be impactful in the world in this way versus the bad person way, which is to kind of gain power and money and wealth only without any vulnerability, and without that strong connection. Because if we feel that strong connection, and I think we can all agree for the most part, is that when we feel that really, really, really strong connection of happiness, all we really want to do is give. It gives us joy to give openly and freely, and it's wonderful. I mean, that is one of the reasons why I want to be a very successful entrepreneur, is so that I can connect. And when I'm like vibing with the people, and I meet someone and I'm like, oh my god, I want you to do this, I want to be able to give. I want to be someone who can give. So I want to, besides having resources in my head, whether it's connections or financial resources, I want to give to the world. And so I hope I get to do that as much as I desire to one day. And maybe you feel the same way. So that's the 6 energy sources, and I'm so happy that I got to share them with you. So I want us to all think about it and think through, how can we make sure to tap into each of these energy sources so we stay energized through our entrepreneurial journey. All right, so this is Christy, and in the next podcast, or probably the next one, I'm winging it here, we're going to talk more about how to maintain our energy as we start to do the lean startup, or basically do a startup, of course trying to stay lean, and figuring out a product development, trying to keep costs low, and it can be a very trying time. So how do we start our business without losing energy?